Now, I like to describe what I look at in a dog and when I pick a Siberian. I look for total balance. And I don't think I've seen the perfect dog yet. I always can pick out some little thing that I don't like. But it depends on how serious it is whether I would discard the dog. And I always think back to 1 year in Ottawa. Bill Scher and Lombard came to me, and I was kingpin at the time, and they said, well, you know, can you beat this team and this guy drives this dog in the team? I said, oh, no sweat. I looked at the dog was bow-legged and straight stifle and had a big tumor here. And looked like a pig. Short body. This guy beat me by 15 minutes for 30 miles a day. So you have to be careful. It depends what's here and what's here in the dog. I've seen some pretty poor dogs, and I've made, as a matter of fact, I have a long history of taking somebody else's dog that they shouldn't make go, and turning around and beating them. And I like to tell the classic story of what happened to me in Alaska. My wife and I had been out training the dogs, and we came in Dick Toes' yard. This is a beautiful animal tied to the mailbox post. And my wife, wow, does that look like it can run? So we went in and we put our dogs up in their dog boxes and came back into the house. And as I walked by, you know, I looked at the dog. And, Dick Toes' wife says, oh, I asked her, I says, what's that dog out? She says, I don't know, a couple of fellows come in the car and they tied it there, and she was just tied with a clothesline. So that night when Dick Tozer came home from work, he asked me how I liked that dog, and I said, boy, I said, that dog really looks like he can fly. He says, well, you can buy her. She was sent down from Fairbanks for it. And I said, well, you know, what about her? He says, well, she's supposed to be a leader. And I said, well, has she had any training or anything? And he says, I don't know. And I said, well, you better call the guy up because, you know, I want to know how much pressure I can put on the dog. Well, he called the fellow up. He couldn't find out too much. So I took the dog out the next day with a couple of triples that I had. And I went about 7.5 miles. And she went about 4 miles real good. Real sharply, G-hop, boy, she was like that. And but after 4 miles, she tailed off a little bit, and she wasn't driving. And when I came back in, my wife says, well, what do you think? And I said, well, look at her. She was standing there, and she was just a vibrator. I said, boy, there's something the matter with that dog. She's wagging her tail, happy as hell. So we went in the house, had a cup of coffee, and we were kind of shooting the breeze back and forth. And my wife's as good a veterinarian as I was. Never went to vet school. Never had any other than high school. But boy, I taught her well. She says, you don't suppose that dog would have a muscle disease? Boy, the light went on. I went in and I got a shot of vitamin E. I got a shot of calcium. Both of them act as catalysts and carry off the lactic acid when the muscle gets fatigued. Now, have you ever noticed when you're extremely tired, your muscles will twitch? This is what was going on with it. Your muscles are loaded with lactic acid. The next day, I drove her with 4 dogs for 7.5 miles. And geez, you could just barely see it coming. Boy, I never even took the harness off her. I ran for my medicine bag. I loaded her again. 2 weeks later, I won the Alaska State Championship with her on beat. Then I found out that this dog had been through 5 top kennels in Fairbanks. Nobody could make this dog go. And they were trying to sell it. The price was $700. And they were trying to pull the wool over my eyes. But when I ever won the state championship with her, God, what's this guy got? You know, and I never told them until about 2 years ago what I did. Now everybody in Fairbanks that has a dog won't run, they'll call me. What'd you give that dog? So, anyways, when I measure a dog, And of course I'm used to doing this, and apparently my hand is just about the right size. From here to here is about 7.5 inches. And gee, I'm glad we've got this dog. What I am able to do from the point of the shoulder to the humerus, point of the humerus, down here to the point of the elbow, 7.5 inches. Down here I allow about 30% more than that 7.5 inches. And I want about a 10% pasture. I'll tell you something about pasture also. One of Sep's. Sep says, well, you're going to be running on roads, you're going to be running on trails, or what are you going to be running on? Dad says, well, he says, mostly roads. He says, well, you want a straighter pasture. He says, and those dogs will just bounce and keep bouncing. They'll bounce forever. Tireless. You get a dog get too much let down, they'll break down on real hard going. I'm not talking about trails now, I'm talking about on road. So what we did is we'd see a little pup, and the dog would have beautiful angulation in the passage. We turn them down. But that dog wouldn't make it. We wanted the straightest thing. I never agreed with that entirely, but obviously it must have worked, because as I look back, the good dogs were those that had the straight cycles, or straightest cycles, not completely straight, because I don't believe. Also, I've only ever had 3 what I call big-toed dogs. In other words, the dog stands there like this. Not too wide here, but he stands there and he toes in. And all 3 of those dogs were top dogs. And I've taken pictures of them. The front end, they just roll the front end like this instead of, you know, a dog, according to Lombard, and I agree with him, you want a slight toe up, but not too much. Because if there's too much toe out, when that dog lands, he has to turn his feet before he picks them up. So he wears his feet out. So you want just a slight toe up. And that straightens out when he throws his shoulders out to pick his feet up. But if he's got too much, he has to turn them too much, and he wears the feet out. Okay, and likewise, and I like pretty close to a 30% layback in the shoulder. I'm 7.5 inches here from the tuba sacralii to the ischiatic bone, right there. I want 7.5 inch femur. Then I will allow more length here, about that 30%, and then on down. Also, length of back. I want the wheel just about right where this one is. I don't like it carried back too far because then you've got a rope back. 10% more length than from here to the top of the withers, top of the shoulder blade. The measurement is from the point of the heel bone to the ischium, right here. You've got a balanced dog. And I don't care what anybody says, that if a larger percentage of the dogs are balanced dogs, and you're picking dogs that are balanced, I'm not saying you won't come up with a real gem on a dog that is built different than this, but on the average, you'll have better dogs. You'll have better dogs. Now, the problems with the dogs that I see today, and I'm surprised at the dogs that I'm seeing here. I'm seeing some pretty fair dogs. A lot of dogs I like. But I might just well come right out and say it. The problem with the show dogs today is they're a miniature Malamute. That's exactly what they are. You look at a Malamute and you look at the show type Siberian, and they're exactly the same except for plumage. The plumage on a Malamute is different than it is on the Siberian. But if you shave both of those dogs, except for weight and size, you get the same dog. has been created by the show people.